Okay, we're all ready. I just want to begin by saying welcome to Park Ridge. I know there's some residents here, some people from other towns. This idea for this forum was brought to me by a local resident, Corinne Murphy. I want to thank her for organizing it. I also want to thank the participants. Over here to my right is Chief Joseph Madden, our Superintendent of Schools, Bob Gamper. Officer Stowe, will you be speaking tonight?
I'm basically here for more specific, like technical questions. I'm a member of the Firearms Investigation Unit at the department. So if there are questions or concerns about application process within New Jersey, or since I'm more of a firearms expert, specific questions about legalities of certain firearms or certain technical questions.
That's great, because I was joking earlier. This is not a joking matter, but I'm probably the least qualified person in this room to be speaking about gun safety and guns and ammunition. I'm not very well versed in it, so to have you here, I do appreciate that. We also have to my left Dennis Hirschfelder from the Bergen County chapter of the Brady campaign, and to my far left is Larissa Mendez Downs from Mothers Demand Action. And we will be having the mother of a victim of gun violence speaking towards the end and giving us her story. Her name is Jennifer Gonzalez, and we'll be asking Ms. Gonzalez to get up and share with us her story. Like I said, I feel like I am the least qualified to be talking about that, so I'm not going to try to pretend that I have answers. I try to speak from my heart. I spoke to a person today, and they were asking me why we're doing it, and I said, it feels like we're going down the wrong road. I said, the world doesn't feel safer than it did when I was a kid. And I don't know what the answer is, but I just feel like, you know, everybody here, when you walk into your living room and there's a high school on the TV, do you think of there must be a football game going on? No, your heart drops, and you think, what happened at that high school, no matter where it is. And that never happened when I was a kid, and I don't know why it's happening now. And, you know, the thing is with this topic is it's so divisive, and I don't know why, because the gun owners that I know are responsible people. I only know a few, but they're responsible with their weapons. They register them, and they do the things that a gun owner is supposed to do. So I don't know why it would be controversial to talk about what we could do to possibly make the world a little safer. I mean, I don't think anybody in this room could argue that we want our children safe, right? I mean, I have 3 children. I'm sick over what I hear. So I don't have much authority. The only reason I'm here is because the good people of Park Ridge were kind enough to elect me mayor. So other than that, I have very little power. I can't pass legislation that would be effective from a local. But we can tell people that we're kind of fed up, and we want things to be discussed, and we want things to move in a new direction. And I think the more we do this, I think that's what could come of it. And I'm hoping that this is one of many other meetings, and we could start this moving along. I'm going to try not to speak too much longer, but I did. I was given a proclamation that is another thing I didn't know about. Is it June? For June 1st is gun awareness. Orange is the color of gun violence awareness. So I went out and bought myself an orange tie, and I'm going to read a proclamation. So here we go. Thank you. Proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This proclamation declares that the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the Borough of Park Ridge, to honor and remember all the victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day, 96 Americans are killed by gun violence on average, and there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other developed countries, and whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the mayor's highest responsibility, And whereas support of the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas the mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activities and how to address it, and are positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas in January 2013, Hadea Pendleton, a teenager who traveled to Washington, D.C. to march in the presidential inaugural parade and was tragically shot just weeks later, should be now celebrating her 21st birthday. And whereas to help honor Hadea and the 96 American lives who were cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated January 1st, 2018, the first Friday in June, as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadea's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when they're out in the woods, and orange is the color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 1st, the first Friday in June 2018, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 1st, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved by Mayor Keith J. Mishagna that the Borough of Park Ridge declares the first Friday in June, June 1st, 2018, to be the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effect of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. Thank you. What I'd like to do is we'll move on to our most precious commodity, our children. We're fortunate to have Dr. Robert Gamper here, the school superintendent for Park Ridge, and perhaps, Bob, you could speak about some of the initiatives the schools are doing.
Thank you, Mayor Mishagna. Is this on? It is? I'm not used to such an official format. Anyway, good evening, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to the forum as well. I want to say that the school district enjoys a very, very good working relationship and a collaborative relationship with the town council and with the Park Ridge Police Department. Anytime we have a discussion about safety, school safety, initiatives, things that we're thinking about, it always gets run by the police department, Chief Madden, Captain Rampola, any of the other officers that frequent the building on a daily basis. So I do want to thank the police department and the town council for always being supportive of our efforts in the schools. A few things that we've been working on, and it's happened over time. None of this is just, all of this hasn't happened at once, but we've done a number of changes. We made a number of changes in the schools to keep children safer. Not just from guns. I know that this forum tonight is on gun safety, but I'm responsible for safety in all shapes and forms, all kinds of dangers at present for children, and I'm responsible for trying to keep them safe. So some of this does have to do or can be applied to gun safety, some of it does not, but the bottom line is that all of these efforts that we've made are in the best interest of keeping children safe. So right now at our schools we have a single point of entry at both elementary schools. They're manned by staff when the doors are unlocked. We have 2 points of entry at the high school, also manned by staff in the mornings. Our elementary school front offices we remodeled several years ago, must be 4 or 5 years ago, where you get buzzed into the lobby area and then you cannot walk into the hallway. You have to go through the main office, but you need to get buzzed into the main office as well. So there's 2 different layers there of prevention where a person who's coming into the schools would have to get past. We do have panic buttons in all 3 schools in undisclosed locations. If there was ever an emergency, staff and the administration know where they are. We've installed security cameras outside of our buildings on the exterior. So all of our entrances and exits have camera coverage, and we're slowly but surely adding more cameras to the system to include other areas, not just the entrances, but playgrounds and so forth. Those cameras also have access, or I should say police cars also have access to those cameras. So they can see what's happening. If they get called to the school, they can look in the cameras in the car and they can see what's happening. I also want to thank the police department again. We enjoy a heavy police presence in the schools. There's walkthroughs that happen on a daily basis at all 3 buildings. It's not uncommon for me to be in a school and see a police officer walking through. It happens on a very much regular basis, and we're certainly appreciative and happy with that. And the last piece is that we're required to do 1 security drill a month, and we always do our security drill at the buildings in conjunction with the Park Ridge Police Department. So there's an officer there, Captain Rampol is there, and those drills get run. Then there's always a debriefing of sorts after the drill where the principal, police talk about how the drill went and trying to make changes or recommendations for improvement. So just a short list of what's going on in the schools in terms of keeping students safe. And like I said, I just want to thank the mayor and Ms. Murphy for having me here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up later for a dialogue. I think that's always the best way to handle this thing. So we'll hold that to the end. I failed to recognize Corinne. I think I mentioned your name, but if Corinne, if you'd like to get up and say a few words, you're more than welcome to. Corinne organized this gathering.
Hello? Okay. Hi. Hi, my name is Corinne Murphy, and I'm a Park Ridge resident for over 10 years now. Our town did a school walk-in to recognize gun violence in the high schools. And my children are in elementary school. They're here tonight. And they came home questioning, what's going on? Was there danger in a school? What's going on? Are children dying? And I said, you're safe. You're in a very safe school. And I wanted parents to be aware of what our town is doing to protect us and guard us from gun violence. Gun violence is happening in Bergen County. It's, we hear a lot of times, oh, it's only in inner cities or it's in unsafe areas. It's happening here too. There's plenty of accidental deaths. There's plenty of domestic violence deaths occurring in Bergen County. There's a lot of suicides, unfortunately, done through gun violence. So I wanted to make our town aware, and hopefully, since it was in the newspaper, other towns would come. Other leaders, other residents that are also concerned, and they could bring what we're doing here back to their towns, and we can open up the discussion. We don't have to talk about, in my opinion, we don't have to talk about whether owning a gun is your right or not your right, or if you're a good person or bad person from owning a gun, but we can all agree that when we go to school or we go into a public building that we want to be safe. We don't want to die from a gun death. So I'm so glad to see so many people here, and let's just listen to what everyone has to say, and we can ask questions and go forward. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Corinne. And also, I said a few things. I haven't prepared any remarks, so I sometimes just speak. And I said we're heading in the wrong direction. I do feel that the residents of Park Ridge should feel comfortable that the people in the positions that protect our citizens and our children are doing everything they can. I didn't want to imply that we're heading down the wrong road, although we could always do more, and I think that's important. It's extremely complicated dialogue, and what I would ask everybody is to be open to everybody's point of view. I know there's good gun owners out there. I'm not one of them. My grandfather was a hunter. He was responsible, but I just don't think it's healthy. On a national stage, you will see people dig their heels in, and you're either for or against us, that kind of thing. And that's the thing I think has changed the most in my lifetime. When I was a kid, you could have somebody in a position of authority, an elected official, that you could disagree with, and you weren't enemies because you disagreed with it. And I think that was a more healthy environment than we're seeing now. So I would ask all of you, and I know some of you have been touched personally by this thing, is to see it from both directions, and let's move towards the right direction. It may take longer than we expect, but let's all put our efforts in the same direction. Okay. With that, our Chief Law Enforcement official, Chief Joe Madden, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Chief Joseph Madden of Park Ridge Police Department. I do also want to thank Corinne for making tonight happen. I think it's very important that we have some education and awareness, especially since we've had a significant increase in a lot of heinous acts around the country as well as the county. And you're absolutely right, we're not immune to that. But I do agree with and thank Dr. Gamper for some of his comments. Our police department has a great track record of keeping this community safe. We've always been known to be one of the safest communities, not only in the county, but probably in the country. And that's because of the hard work and dedication of my officers. And also the commitment we have to working with the schools to keep our most valuable resource, our children, safe. So Corinne had actually wanted me to touch on my focus was something that we added to our website earlier this year, which I think is important because no matter how we talk about these problems we see in the school, we have some common denominators. It's access to weapons and probably some issues with some mental health issues that haven't been exposed prior to the event. That coupled with some other issues within the school and in the community, I think it's somewhat taboo of people speaking out when they think somebody may be in trouble. I think that's something that we really have to work on. I also have a real important announcement when I'm done with these gun safety rules about the new Bergen County Safe Schools Task Force, which is very exciting. I'll get into that in a few minutes. But talking about some key guidelines for safe storage of weapons. And I did make a couple of copies of them. They're on the back desk. We also brought some free gun locks for people who own weapons. If any of you do own weapons, we have some free gun locks. We've been trying to distribute them for many, many years. We've advertised it in local papers because we do want to make sure that, as the mayor had mentioned earlier, the majority of gun owners use them for hobby, and they're safe, and they keep them in proper storage areas. But we do have incidents, and they're kind of being magnified, with these tragedies we've seen, where people are being able to access weapons. So these aren't, of course, these guidelines are not all-inclusive, but I think they're important, so I'm going to go over them one by one. The first one is unloaded firearms should be stored in a locked cabinet, safe, gun vault, or storage case. The storage location should be inaccessible to children. If anybody has done any research on these different storage opportunities, the technology is amazing. They have now they have fingerprint technology, they have eye scans. They really have taken it to another level to try and allow the people who should have access to weapons to access the weapons. The second point is gun locking devices render firearms inoperable and can be used in addition to locked storage. If firearms are disassembled, parts should be securely stored in separate locations. The gun locks that we have provided today, and they will be available at our headquarters if anybody needs them in the future, are free, and it's a great way of keeping the gun safe in your home. The third point is ammunition should be stored in a locked location separate from firearms. Very important. You don't want to ever put them together because it makes it a lot easier for a tragedy to occur, because nowadays with these automatic weapons, it doesn't really take a lot to put a magazine into a gun. The gun kind of automatically locks in place, and even children suddenly, we've heard all the tragedies, they can suddenly think they're playing and it ends up in violence. The last but not least is thoroughly double-check firearms to confirm that they are unloaded when you remove them from storage. Accidents could occur if a family member borrows a gun or returns it to storage while still loaded. Very important. We've seen a lot of tragedies in the paper where parents leave a loaded weapon. They may be thinking it's for safety and security. Then the children suddenly are playing hide and seek. They find a gun, and we know what the outcome is. Very unfortunate. We also want to, of course, protect our most valuable resource, so we do have a message for our children. Children and adolescents are naturally curious about firearms, and as a result, may be tempted to play with the firearm they find. Make sure young people in your home are aware of and understand these safety guidelines. Don't go snooping or allow other kids snooping for guns in the house. If you find a gun in your house or anywhere else, stop. Do not touch it or allow anyone else to. Leave the area and be sure to tell an adult immediately. Even if a gun looks like a toy, don't touch it. Some real guns look like toy guns, so don't take a chance. Leave the area and immediately tell an adult. And there's also a short video. All of these These tips are on our website. We try to keep it up to date. There's also a nice link on the bottom for younger children. It kind of has a cartoon, introduces them to gun safety. We've also added a segment, I don't know if all of you are familiar, we did our first junior police academy. Community policing is very important in our town. I think we do an outstanding job. Our first junior police academy did not include a segment on handgun safety. This year, we're putting that into the new curriculum, so I think that's going to be helpful. We have a couple of different gun clubs in town as well. They always help us out with different safety tips. We are here if you need us for any kind of safety and security measures for weapons. That kind of covers that. We can ask questions later about that. But getting back to the Bergen County Safe Schools Task Force, and believe me, I really respect my political leaders in Park Ridge, but this is not a political message. Our acting prosecutor, Dennis Callow, I have to give him a lot of credit. He kind of jumped on our Attorney General's hard work from last year, Grabir Graywall, because Grabir Graywall last year as our county prosecutor, he started to look into how we could keep both our schools and our communities safer. He mandated 16 hours of mandated training for every police officer in the entire county for active shooter training. We had never had mandated training like that before. That kind of, as many of you know, our former prosecutor, now the Attorney General, acting prosecutor Dennis Callow, kind of took that initiative and started his own Bergen County Safe Schools Task Force. And I think it's a great idea. It's a collaborative effort between police administrators, prosecutor's office, mental health professionals, school administrators, safety experts, political leaders, and we're trying to narrow down best practices so we can all kind of do some brain thinking and keep both our community and our children safe. I think it's very important. Hopefully it'll continue to create a better communication flow between and I'm not saying that the mental health professionals are the cause of any of these incidents, but I think that we need a good, maybe a little bit of better communication between mental health professionals when it's dealing with a weapon, when somebody they know has access to a weapon. We have to somehow get that to the forefront, and so we can do our jobs and protect our community. So I'm very excited about both the gun safety initiatives and the school task force initiatives, and we're open for any questions that you may have.
Okay, I want to thank, I see Councilman Rob Metzdorf in the back of the room, Councilman Mintz, and Council President Matt Capilli sitting in the back. I appreciate you guys being here. When we started talking about doing this event, I was trying to get myself educated because, like I said, I really didn't know a lot about this. So I went, and it's so difficult because everybody's heard that, oh, Chicago, they got the toughest gun laws in the country, and it's a mess over there. And that's a good question. Why is that? Well, the problem is we have to start looking at this thing more of a regional. We have. I went to an event in Hackensack, and they spoke the state. Was it the commander, the state police? I think that's his title, right, commander? He said, superintendent, excuse me. I think there was something like 300 guns used in violent crimes since the start of the year in the state of New Jersey, and 77% came out of state. So you go, well, it looks like we're doing a job here. We're keeping some guns out, but we're letting them in. And the state police have a program now to track where these guns are coming from. And I think this is, if it's not the answer, it's one of the most important parts of this. If there's a place in Biloxi, Mississippi that they're running guns up from, we have to know that. If they're buying them in certain stores that are just letting people walk in and then bring them up to New Jersey, we need to know that. So I was very pleased to see that on a state level. They're doing things regionally, and I think they're working to find out where the source of the problem is. Okay. With that being said, I'd like to ask. Yes, sure.
I'd also like to mention with the School Safety Task Force, I was very fortunate earlier this year to be named the president of the Bergen County Chiefs Association. So I'm a member of the task force. So I will be, actively involved in helping make things happen and make our children and our community safer. And I do want to really thank Mayor Mashagna and the entire council, because they do support all our initiatives in Park Ridge. They've been outstanding since when the mayor was my police commissioner, supported us tremendously. And that's both, budget-wise and understanding that we have to work collaboratively outside of Park Ridge to sometimes make Park Ridge a better place. So I do want to give Mayor Mashagna and the council a thank you, because they've really been super supportive to help keep everybody safe in town. And this is more, this is geared towards the residents of Park Ridge, so you should know that we have a great collaborative effort between the school superintendent, the mayor and council. We just have a really great thing going on in Park Ridge, but we're never satisfied. We'll continue to use whatever technology we need to make us safer, and I can't guarantee that things are not going to happen here, but we will do our due diligence to try and minimize them happening and to mitigate issues in our town.
Thanks, Chief, and I apologize. I mean, that's a great honor. Our police chief, Park Ridge Police Chief, was named the president of the Bergen County Police Chiefs Association for this year. And what that does for us is he's going to be in the middle of meetings and things that are going on. He's going to be right in the thick of things. So that's a great thing for the residents of Park Ridge. And like you said, I've always been a big supporter, and it's only because they do a great job. So I thank you for that. Next, I would like to have Dennis Hirschfelder from the Brady campaign of Bergen County, New Jersey, to give us a few words.
Thank you. I commend you for having here on the dais tonight the mayor, the chief of police, the superintendent of education, and a key police officer who has a major role in the issue of gun violence prevention here in the town, schools, etc. Good, really. My congratulations. I wish all towns here in Bergen County and elsewhere would do it. I want to add one thing to the issue of where guns come from in terms of crimes. This is a particular interest to the Brady campaign, and you're absolutely right. That's the vast percentage of guns come from out of state. We know the states they come from. One of the Brady campaign's major initiatives, and we've done this in several places, and New Jersey is ground zero for it, Newark specifically. We go after gun dealers. 5% of the gun dealers are responsible for selling 90% of the guns that are used in crimes. 5%. And we track them down, we take them to court, and we win. And it is frightening to think. They call it the iron pipeline. Although Pennsylvania is the largest source, percentage-wise, of guns from the governor's report that just came out. Pennsylvania is the largest source of guns used in New Jersey crime. In any case, the Brady campaign, the name Brady, I don't know if some of you may know the name Jim Brady. Jim Brady was President Reagan's press secretary. And in 1981, there was an assassination attempt on President Reagan. And Jim Brady was seriously injured. He suffered a gunshot wound to the head, never fully recovered. And the Brady campaign, particularly with Jim and Sarah, his wife's leadership, was formed back then. As an aside, I'm from Centralia, Illinois, and Jim Brady is from Centralia, Illinois. We were 2 years apart. I grew up with him. And once we went off to college, I really kind of lost track of him until after that accident. So I have a particular connection, if you will, with the organization. We have the Brady campaign has three major goals. Number one is to ensure that their background checks are done on every single gun sale, not just sales of guns in stores, but at gun shows, private sales. We do not want a gun to be sold in this country without a background check being done on it. Number two, to stop the bad apple gun dealers. We call them bad apple gun dealers. That's just what I was referring to. Those gun dealers who really are guilty of, they break the law, and they provide guns that are used in a vast percentage of the crimes in this nation. And three, we're leading a national conversation around the whole issue of the dangers of guns in home, preventing homicides, suicides, and unintentional shootings that occur every day. Okay, Gun violence is a really, really serious public health problem. Really serious. There are about 35,000 people per year killed. Almost as many as who are killed in automobile accidents. 35,000 people are killed every year from guns. Another 80,000 are injured. The personal toll is enormous when it happens, and I'm sure the police chief and the officer who have had experiences where someone has been killed or injured in a gun incident, whatever the cause, it is awful. It is a terrible, terrible disaster for that family, for friends, for relatives. Of the 35,000 or so that are killed every year, 60%, just over 60% are suicides. That is huge. And this gets into the mental health issue. But 60% are suicides. 12,000 are murders, 500 accidents, killed by accidents, almost 500 killed by legal intervention by the police, and 81,000 are injured. They sustain a gun injury, a gun-related injury, and they survive. 81,000. These are figures out of the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, and it is a terrific data reporting system on all products. It's emergency room based. So that's the problem on a national level. Children are particularly vulnerable to gun-related deaths and injuries. Every day, 46 children and teens are shot in murders, assaults, suicide attempts. Every day, 7 children and teens die in this country from gun violence. Every day, 40 children and teens are shot and survive. Our children are impacted tremendously by gun violence. Bringing the figures close to home, New Jersey is one of the best states in this country for laws and regulations related to combating gun violence. This goes back to the late 80s, early 90s. Governor McGreevey and others played a vitally important role in ensuring that we have the kind of laws on our books and regulations on our books that truly protect the 8 million, or now more than 8 million residents here in the state of New Jersey. Nonetheless, and this is information from the Giffords Law Center, Giffords as in Gabby Giffords, subsequent to the terrible shooting in Arizona, Gabby Giffords and her husband Mark Kelly formed an organization. It's called Giffords. It has merged within the last year with the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, and they are leading the fight. They're a very important part of the movement, of which our organization, Moms Demand Action, and one or two others are, to combat the toll that I just referred to earlier. But they have, in terms of New Jersey, they have reported that there's an average of 280 gun-related homicides here in the state of New Jersey each year, 184 gun-related suicides, 764 non-fatal interpersonal shootings, and 599 accidental shootings per year. The 6th lowest number of gun deaths per capita in the country. And it probably has to do with a lot of factors, but certainly the kind of laws and regulations we have on our books regarding background checks, regarding how what the process that people have to go through to get permits to have guns, etc. We do have a problem in New Jersey, certainly with Newark and Patterson and Camden, of urban gun violence, but it contributes significantly to the figures. And one of the challenges of gun violence is that each of these little parts, whether you talk about suicide of teens, whether you talk about gun violence, accidents in the home with kids and adults, whether you talk about domestic violence, whether you talk about people who are suffering from mental issues, as we referred to earlier, how you combat each of these requires sometimes a very unique approach. The common denominator is the gun, and locking the gun up, making sure that gun is locked up. If people, if You have good background checks. You make darn sure the owners of the gun are responsible, and lock them up properly. Separate the gun from the ammunition, etc. I have one suggestion. You talk about that on your website. We have had towns around the country where the police chief, the superintendent of education, actually sent a letter to every home. Here, for those of you who haven't, just a reminder: here are the rules to follow. Because we get very concerned. We have lots of reports where kids go in to babysit, kids go in to visit, and there you'll hear about a program shortly that Moms has, and Brady has one similar, where we focus on this whole issue of trying to determine before anything happens that guns are properly, if someone has them, they're properly stored. I have a side effect, I'm not going to use her name, I have a PT in Teaneck, where I'm from. My PT and her husband each have a pistol in their nightstand. And they keep it there for their personal safety. But it's a loaded weapon. They just had a baby. And it scares the daylights out of me. It's just a personal thing. It just scares the daylights out of me. Fine to have a gun in the home. And if you want it for protection or for hunting or target shooting. A lot of people are target shooting. Keep it locked up. Keep it properly locked up. The guidelines that Chief Madden has outlined are wonderful. Oh, that everyone followed them. But I guarantee you here in this community, there's some that don't. And that's putting people at risk. So, that's just a quick overview of the numbers, and I will be glad to answer any questions later. It's a very serious problem. And Corinne, more power to you for getting us all here today.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll have Larissa Mendez Downs from Mothers Demand Action.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening. As the mayor said, my name is Larissa Mendez Downs, and I am a volunteer for the local group of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Moms was founded in 2012, the day after the Sandy Hook shooting, when 20 children and their 6 educators were killed in Newtown, Connecticut. Our founder, Shannon Watts, went online looking basically for the gun violence prevention equivalent of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and couldn't find it. So therefore she decided to set up a Facebook page that snowballed into basically what is Moms Demand Action, and they got together with Mayors Against Illegal Guns under what eventually became the Everytown umbrella. So we work with them. Now, Moms focuses on gun sense legislation, gun sense candidates, things like that. But I'm really here to talk about and to echo a lot of what the chief and what Dennis said about gun safety and gun storage. I think securing guns is probably one of the single most important things that you can do. I think we've seen several times in the news recently how people who've gained access to guns that weren't theirs have wreaked havoc on their communities and a ripple effect throughout our country. So Moms has probably my favorite program dedicated to this called Be Smart. And Be Smart is actually an acronym. It's for Secure All Guns in Your Homes and Vehicles, Modeling Responsible Behavior Around Guns, Asking About the Presence of Guns, of unsecured guns in other homes, Recognizing the Risks of Teen Suicide, and then telling others to be smart. I really like this program because it does not focus on whether you own a gun or not. It doesn't focus on gun policy. While Moms supports the Second Amendment, we really underscore the importance of keeping guns away from those that shouldn't have them. And so much of that is little kids. I often talk about a recent example. In my husband's hometown, he is from Indiana, and recently at one of the parking lots, you may have seen this several weeks ago, a 3-year-old toddler found an unsecured gun in between the passenger and driver's seat. You know, the little hatch, the little Yes, thank you, the console. And she picked it up, being a toddler, and was messing around with it, shot her pregnant mom, and it went through the mom's back, out the shoulder. Luckily, the mother and the unborn child survived, but the police came to find a 3-year-old toddler basically screaming in a parking lot as her mother was bloodily carried away. And that's what we talk about. Indiana also has, for all of its issues with some gun laws, it does have gun laws about securing a gun in your vehicle, securing it safely, ammunition being stored properly away from the weapon, as the chief said. And this person, the father of the toddler and the boyfriend of the mom, had not done so. And so those are the kind of things that Be Smart focuses on. You know, we've all heard the awful stories where the young child reaches into grandma's purse. This has happened at least twice that I know of. Looking for candy, they end up finding grandma's gun, and they shoot themselves. So it's about securing the guns in your home and vehicles. I really appreciated the chief talking about the amazing technology that we now have. If you want to have, as Dennis's PT does, quick and easy access to a weapon because you've evaluated that you need that in your home, there are biometric safes that you can buy. Costco, Amazon, they're not hard to get. You can buy anything that's this big for an individual gun to things as big as closet safes, that kind of thing. And it really makes a difference. A recent study conducted by Rutgers said that 82% of parents do not safely store their guns, and 72% think that their kids can tell the difference between a gun and a toy gun and a real gun. The study also found that gun safety programs have little to no effect on kids. The truth is, if you have kids or grandkids, you know that they're incredibly curious, and if they find something that's really interesting, they will pick it up and try to see what's there. So that's number one. Number two, modeling responsible behavior around guns. Not only storing them properly, but for example, if you're a hunting family, certainly I had an uncle who loved to hunt. His thing was, this is not a toy. We treat the gun as if it's loaded 100% of the time, whether you think it's loaded or not. So things like that, and kids, we always tell them, we have the joke, do as I say, not as I do, but really modeling is how they've learned, they really learn their behavior, and so we do that. This is, the ask part, I find, is usually what intimidates people most about asking about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. I like talking about an example. I think I have a couple of these in the back if you're interested, but last summer, a New Jersey mom, actually, with a toddler, wrote to Dear Abby asking her what she thought, how she could approach asking about unsecured guns or guns in the home of potential playdates. She said, my family were hunters, my fathers and brothers were. We had conversations around this, but I find that it might not be a topic of comfort for others. How can I approach this? And Abby said, well, it might be off-putting if you bring that up. And immediately, not only the mom's community, but pediatricians and others responded, no, that's not the correct answer. We ask about prescription drugs in the home. We ask about allergens. We ask if children are allergic to peanuts, to cats. If people have a pool, it's closed? Is it secured? Is it unsecured? We ask about bleach, medications, all of these things. Why wouldn't we ask about an unsecured gun? And so this is about whether you text a person before a play date, whether you text another parent because your child is going to babysit at this person's home, or people are coming to you. The Be Smart program walks parents or grandparents through the ways that you can ask another person about unsecured guns in their home. And things to say if that person says, well, yeah, but my kids know not to go there. Well, you have the right as a parent to then say, well, come over to my house or let's meet in a playground or do something similar. This is also a great conversation to have during the holidays, and I always like to say, you're going to be having awkward conversations during the holidays anyway with your family. Why not ask another one? I mean, it's probably going to be the least awkward conversation you have during the holidays. So it's a good time to, ask maybe grandpa's a hunter or grandma's a hunter, The other thing is, as Dennis said, 2/3 of America's gun violence, gun deaths are suicide. So recognizing the risk of teen suicide is part of this conversation. The 18 to 24-year-olds, particularly young men, tend to be particularly impulsive. And so if there's a gun, when they are making this type of impulsive decision, 85% of the time that decision is fatal if there's a gun involved. Whereas, for example, overdoses are actually, while we hear a lot about them, in the case of suicide, overdoses actually make up about 3% of those successful suicide attempts. So recognizing the signs of teen suicide is also a huge portion of the mental illness conversation. As Dennis said, the mental illness conversation is important to have because really chances are that if the truly mentally ill take a gun, it's going to be to hurt themselves rather than others. And then finally, we talk a little bit about talking to others. So whether it's in forums like this, we do have a whole presentation and conversation dedicated to just this topic, but we're happy to bring it to your book club, to your PTA, to your council. In Fair Lawn, we've started, that's where I'm from, in Fair Lawn, we've been working with the chief and the community outreach director to give out our little Be Smart cards and pamphlets when somebody applies for a permit. We initially asked the chief to give out our little cards and pamphlets about Be Smart and Safe gun storage if somebody got a permit, but the chief thought it would be a better idea to give them out when somebody applied for a permit, which I thought was a really good idea because then they're thinking about that before they even get permission to get a gun. So I really was grateful for that insight. Finally, Moms does things like wear orange campaigns to bring gun violence awareness to our community. As the proclamation that the mayor read, Wear Orange was started by a group of a young woman's friends. She lost her life shortly due to gun violence in her neighborhood. And her friends wanted to commemorate her life, not only to mourn it, but to celebrate it. And Gun Violence Awareness Month is June, and Gun Violence Awareness Day is on her birthday, which is June 2nd, but now we celebrate the whole weekend. And so we not only bring awareness to the issue, but also, like I said, celebrate that. And this year, once again, for the 6th year in a row, we'll be marching across the Brooklyn Bridge clad in orange and just trying to bring awareness to the issue and asking others to be aware of it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. We do have a copy of the proclamation we'd like to give to you. And before we open it to the public, we're going to ask Jennifer Gonzalez to come up and
My name is Jennifer Gonzalez. I'm here to share my personal experience with gun violence. Thanksgiving of 2016 was an enjoyable day spent with my 3 children and my family. My 17-year-old son, Jack, was speaking to my uncle about investing some of his money and buying stocks. Jack was talking about his future, and all seemed well. This is a picture of my son, Jack. He was a senior at Pascack Valley High School. He played lacrosse. He loved to ski. He was smart, had many friends, and he could make people laugh. He was really funny. The day after Thanksgiving, Jack chose to go to his father's house. He hadn't been there in about 5 months, and I thought that he wanted to see his father and maybe try to work things out. But Jack had other intentions. I didn't know this at the time, but a few months before Thanksgiving, on September 22nd, 2016, my ex-husband, who was a retired police officer, was ordered by a Bergen County judge to lock his weapons in his gun safe. Ordered by a judge to lock his weapons in his large gun safe with the combination only known to him. He didn't follow the judge's order, and he left his gun safe wide open. On November 27, 2016, Jack, who was at his father's house, took a gun out of his father's unlocked safe, walked down the street to a nearby park, and shot himself in the head. He died 2 days later. I am heartbroken and will never be the same. Jack's brother and sister will never be the same. And Jack's friends are forever changed because a gun was not safely stored. If Jack's father had common sense, he would have locked up his guns. If Jack's father had only followed the judge's order, my son would still be alive. Millions of children in the United States live in homes in which firearms are left loaded or unlocked, or both. Our children are dying every day because of irresponsible gun owners. We need to do something about that. We have to stop making it so easy for our children to get a hold of guns. Less than a week ago in Santa Fe, a father left his guns unlocked. 10 people are dead. 2 days ago in Virginia, a 4-year-old in Louisa unintentionally shot and killed his 2-year-old brother. And on the same day, a 2-year-old in Roanoke unintentionally shot and killed himself. My son is dead, and like these other dead children, the cause was an unlocked gun. There is no excuse for a child to get a hold of a firearm. Our laws need to be changed. Our children need to be protected. Gun owners, even when they're the parents, need to be held accountable and punished when a minor under the age of 18 gets a hold of a weapon and uses it to hurt themselves or others. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez. Thank you. We're very sorry for your loss. It's difficult to go on after hearing that sad story, but if there's any questions, we'll try to address them from the public. Does anybody have, Corinne, if you'd like to speak on the mic?
My daughter would like to make a statement.
Okay.
She can hold. Yeah.
Hello. I'd like to say, I want to be safe in my school, and because of all the wonderful teachers in my school, and they help me a lot to be safe. So as I told you, I would like to be safe in my school because of all the wonderful teachers. Mr. Allen is my teacher, and he helps me a lot, and he helps me to be safe, so thank you.
Thank you, Gia. And Gia, you could be assured that that's exactly what we want too. My wife is one of those teachers at your schools too, so we want to keep everyone safe, and that's what we're here for today, to talk about how we could best do that. Yes?
I'm Hannah Lumpkin Peters, and I'm a resident for about 7 years now. I wanted to know if either Dr. Gamp or Mr. Manning could elaborate about those monthly safety drills what they mean for the little ones. What do you mean by that? Do they know what's going on? Because I do have a preschooler who is going into kindergarten, and I asked her, and she's, you know, she's not EP, so she can't really tell me. So I just want to know if you could add a little about that.
Howard, were you able to get that, the audio on that? The question was, what exactly are the drills that the police, along with the school district, are doing to try to keep the kids safe? How is that? This woman here has a young child who's coming into the school system, and she's concerned.
So all schools in the state of New Jersey have to have 2 drills per month. One is a fire drill, and the other one is called a school security drill. So the security drill could be an evacuation, it could be an active shooter lockdown, it could be shelter in place. And it's run in conjunction with the police department. So the police department, the officer will be on site, the drill will be called, and it's not called as a drill. It's called, there's no difference between the real thing and the way that we do this once a month. And after the drill is held, there's usually discussion between the police officer and administration about what we can improve upon, what went well, what didn't, et cetera. And that happens 10 times during the school year, in conjunction with the police department.
Thank you very much.
And normally, after they're done, if we have one that's unplanned, that is an emergency type, the superintendent normally sends a message out to the parents explaining what happened during that drill.
If I could just chime in real quick on that too, part of the reason that we do these drills too, and then also the reason that we're always walking through the schools, is so that children get used to seeing us. Because I know people have expressed concerns that, well, you know, a uniformed police officer is scary. So we want children to know that we're not scary. We look scary and imposing in uniform, and we do have guns on us. So there's always that confusing message. Well, if you want to be careful around guns, but he has a gun. The chief instituted a program that we call the Cop Card Program, where all the officers, we have a baseball card that we made up of each of us, and throughout the year, the students have to approach us, talk to us, ask us the questions. That way they get used to approaching us and being around us. And then they get one of our cop cards, and when they collect the whole set, they get entered into a raffle for stuff. So we do that every few years.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and just commenting on that, the one thing, are you new to the town yet?
No,
Okay.
about 5 years ago.
The police department, I'm always their biggest cheerleader. The thing that I think is most important in a town like this is the community policing and interacting with the kids. Because when I was a kid, I was scared. Maybe I wasn't scared of the cops, but I knew to stay clear of them. You know what I mean? And it's not.
Well, it's tricky these days because of what some cops choose to do and a child sees on the news. So
Right.
I'm totally for my child essentially knowing that you're here for her safety. And let those things, we'll deal with them later because she's little.
Right.
But at the same time, the world is different. I'm 32. It's different. We didn't have cell phones. The lights went down. We came home. Hannah, I heard it. I come home. It's not like that anymore. But being in Park Ridge, meeting my high school sweetheart here, I lived Morris County, I want to keep that small town good stuff here, and it's really great having you here and the police presence, really. So, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I talk loud. I don't need it.
Okay.
You might, if you don't mind, it may not get on the tape. They're filming it. If it's okay with you.
No problem.
Okay.
My name is Annie Hausman. I don't live in Park Ridge. I live in Norwood, but I heard this was happening, and I was very happy to hear it, and I commend all of you. I have 2 children in college. One goes to school in Texas, where they have open carry on campus as of his freshman year, and my daughter went to Europe for a gap year, and people ask me, are you worried about your daughter? And I always say, I'm more worried about my son in Texas. And that is the truth. So my question is, because when my kids were younger, I always asked, if there was a firearm in the house, because there was an incident in my town of Norwood when my son was 2 or 3 years old. No one was hurt, but a gun was shot by a group of young children playing in a basement on a snow day. The moms were upstairs, the kids were downstairs, and luckily no one was harmed, but that was just pure luck. It wasn't due to anyone's part, and there was an unsecure gun, and I'm so sorry. I have a Jack, and it's heartbreaking. So my question is there any provision or a suggestion, that the schools give out to parents on how to ask these kinds of questions? Like, I'm pretty forward. I don't care. I wanted to know, and that incident scared me, along with a pool incident right next door in Harrington Park. And also, if a police officer is going through 16 hours of training per, how often? Per year, can a conversation be started about gun owners having the same guidelines? I don't know if it's legal. I know the Second Amendment is in place. I support the Second Amendment, but I also support common sense gun safety. And I'm not sure that all of these incidents are magnified. They're happening more and more. It's just happening in our backyards. And it's the same thing with drugs. So I'm digressing. So I guess my question is there any forum for parents to talk about this? How to ask other parents? And there was one other, the police officer training. And then as far as mental health issues go, which seem to be associated with a lot of these mass shootings, so between mental health agencies and the police, are there barriers due to HIPAA? And, how do we have a conversation about this without, screaming at each other, like you said in the beginning, Mr. Mayor?
Let me just take
I'm done.
a crack at that.
Sorry,
Number one,
it took up so much time.
as you heard, Larissa talked about Moms Demand Action Be Smart program. The Brady campaign has asked. Both of our websites have detailed information, and I think the Moms probably has some Be Smart materials here. You can go, you can look at those materials, you can go online, and that has some very comprehensive guidelines for parents, for teenagers, whoever has to ask the question. There's some very good guidelines. Number two, getting the PTA behind it. Getting the PTA here in Park Ridge, whatever your Norwood, whatever your community is, get them behind it so it is a community-wide initiative. That it's for everybody, and that is a second suggestion. So it's not isolated. It's not isolated to a school or just an individual situation. Thirdly, there is before the New Jersey legislature a bill called Extreme Risk Protection Order. This bill is passed the Assembly. It was up for the Senate this past Monday, and they pulled it. There are some minor changes that have to be made in the language. It will come back to the Senate on June 4th. It's likely to pass. It will be signed by Governor Murphy. This is trying to address the issue, and what it does, it creates a process, a very fair, comprehensive process for someone who is deemed to be at risk, or someone who is mental issues, to if he or she has guns, to get guns away from him. A spouse, a relative can report that. And there is a system in place where the police department gets involved, where weapons are removed. So that doesn't get to the issue per se of mental health services and programs, which is a whole separate issue and an extremely important one for schools, for veterans, for communities at large, community health centers, hospitals, etc. Big issue, huge issue. But there are things that you can do as a parent in a community by getting the PTA involved and utilizing some of these excellent materials that are available. Anything else?
No, I think that's pretty
If I could,
comprehensive.
real quick, just to add in a little bit, to address some of your concerns. Number one, about speaking to police. I know you said you're from Norwood.
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily what kind of events they do. I know, like our department, we have when the school year starts again, an event called Back to Scoop. We go to the Dairy Queen, and it's sort of like a mini block party. All elementary school students are out again to meet the police, get the cop cards, but interact with us in a non-formal session. I think I can safely say for our department, if your child has a concern and brings it up to you and you're not sure, come down, come talk to us. We'll be happy to just, we may not be in headquarters right at that minute. Like our headquarters has a phone. We'll come in off the road, and address the concern and try to allay any concerns. To the mental health concern, and this is from the application side. Part of the application process, every time a person applies for a purchase, there's two categories of purchasing permits that you have in New Jersey. The firearms purchaser ID card, which is a small card, has an initial application, and that is good for rifle, shotgun, ammunition, and black powder and BB guns. When a person applies for that, they have the application form, which on that form asks, are you currently being treated by a psychiatrist, or have you sought mental health treatment in the past? That basically does rely on the person answering properly, although we do investigations where we have reference letters that we send out to people. So if a person responds, I have some concerns about this person, then we'll investigate it further. However, one of the other forms is the consent for mental health records background check. What that form does is that person is signing, basically giving their okay for the county adjuster to review if they've been involuntarily committed or voluntarily committed to any mental health treatment facility within the state.
Do they have to sign that before they go?
Yes, that is a mandatory thing to apply.
That's amazing.
So and that is exactly there because of HIPAA concerns, but we still want to know if there's a mental history, and I have denied permits in the past based on a return of there was an admission.
Is that statewide?
Yes.
The sad part is it's not nationwide, and I'm sure there's states where it's much less likely that they'll be doing those kind of background checks.
And as part 3 with the training requirements, in New Jersey to get a carry permit is a very difficult process, and you have to show need well above just claiming self-defense. However, part of that application process, you do have to show training, whether it is related to the Police Training Commission approved kind of course, and an NRA safety course, hunter safety training. So you do have to show some training and familiarity with safety. I do know that other states do have similar things. I know Florida is an 8-hour course and a live fire demonstration. I don't know every state, unfortunately, but I know a lot of them that have issued carry permits do have training requirements. Other states, I don't, I'm not sure about, but they may not.
But that's for carry purposes, right? That's not, because otherwise New Jersey doesn't require training just to get a regular
Not for
gun
simple
permit.
possession, no.
I'd like to follow up on on carry. There's an interesting piece of legislation in Congress, in the House and the Senate now, regarding concealed carry. New Jersey has a very, as the officer said, New Jersey has a very strict set of rules about who can get a concealed carry permit. If you can prove that you need to have a concealed weapon, maybe your job requires, etc., you go through the process and you'll get permit to carry a concealed weapon. Many states don't have any permit process. Some states have very weak permit process. And this bill would permit anyone who has a concealed carry permit from any state in the nation to come into New Jersey with their weapon, even though New Jersey has a very, very strict, and that person could never have gotten, let's say, or does not have a permit to carry in New Jersey. So this bill is moving through the House and the Senate, and the Moms Demand Action and the Brady Campaign and a number of other organizations, and the International Association of Police Chiefs and other police officer associations are fighting vehemently against the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act.
Right. It's passed the House, it's in the Senate.
Yeah, we in Park Ridge have passed a resolution opposing reciprocity for concealed carry. First, it's just common sense. Second, it's states' rights. I mean, we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, better than most. You say we're in the top 6, and this will just wipe that away. You'll be able to people will be carrying concealed weapons throughout the state where they got their permit in another state. So I'm proud that we signed off on a resolution opposing that, and hopefully leveler heads prevail. Yes.
If I could just make 2 quick comments real fast. You had mentioned about how do you ask someone if a friend or a neighbor has a gun in the house, et cetera. And as a superintendent, but more as a parent of 3 children, I don't really know if there's a good way to ask that question. I think you just have to ask if that's something that you're interested in. You have to ask it. The second thing, you were talking about the emotional wellness and mental health and so forth in schools. And the Park Ridge School District this year has a contract with West Bergen Mental Health for a full-time therapist who's been stationed at the high school since August and has been working with at-risk students who are having emotional difficulties. So the therapist started off the year working with 9 students and ended up the year working with 25 students, and also is working with some of the families, which is helpful to our student assistance counselor because now he's more free to deal with kind of the day-to-day issues, the ones that don't need, let's say, the continuous counseling on a regular basis, but handle the issues that come up in a typical teenager's life when they're going to school. So the school district the board did renew on Monday night the contract with West Bergen Mental Health, so that will continue. And I will say that I feel as superintendent I'm comfortable where we are in terms of trying to meet the students' emotional needs.
I just want to say one of the tips that we have for the Be Smart program about asking others is to make it about yourself first. So if you have somebody, or we say use texting technology, you use it to break up with people, why not ask awkward questions too? But one of the things we say is, just to let you know, when little Timmy comes over, we have a dog, we don't have a pool, I've locked up all our medications, and FYI, we do have a gun, it's stored safely, or we don't have a gun, and I just wanted to let you know that. And I always say the first couple of times that I would bring that up to people, I could feel my face flush, and it's because for some reason we find it embarrassing to ask that in our culture. But I got over it pretty quickly when I thought, okay, I can either ask and feel better about my kid having this play date, and for the most part, the response has always been very positive, like, oh, thank you for asking, it didn't even occur to me. And then the other conversation I have with myself is, okay, would I rather lose a friend or lose a kid? So, it got easy pretty quick, to be honest.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, since I have a mic, my name is Phil Whitmer. I'm a Park Ridge resident. I'm a Bergen County resident as well. I grew up in Montvale. So I've got about 30 years. I've also been affected by as a young child, I lost a friend to another set of friends playing Superman and having a gun that wasn't secured safely, and lost that friend. And of course, there was the De La Roche family in Montvale as well that we all know about, also an unsecured gun and a mass killing within a mile of here. So, this is a huge issue to be discussed. There's a lot of facets, a lot of emotions to it. But really what I want to ask everybody here, and I want to thank everybody for being here as well, but the thing that keeps coming to mind is, how do we teach somebody to value life? Not only their own life, but other people's lives. And, as I was growing up, we had Pong as a video game. You hit the ball back and forth, back and forth. You go outside, you play kickball with your friends. Now, we have a lot of kids that are playing other games that are a lot more violent games where you're aiming something, bang, 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 and there's no repercussions, there's nothing. And I'm not a mental health professional, I'm just a concerned citizen. But I think within our community, whether it's the council, whether it's the police department, whether it's our education system, we need to be thinking about how to bring that across to this, especially young children, the kids, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. How do we value lives?
It's a very good question, and I'm torn with what you said about the video games, because when I was a kid, I remember going up to my cousin's attic. His father was a World War II veteran, and us taking out his M1 and playing in the backyard with it, unbeknownst to my aunt, and going bang bang and pretending we were in the army. That's what kids did back then. This is kind of progression of that playing. I don't know if it's a kid thing or what, but that's a very difficult question because I don't know who doesn't value life, but I think they just don't realize. I mean, there's a saying that all wars are fought by 18-year-olds because they don't think anything bad's going to happen. So there's irresponsible handling of different situations from younger people. Their brains aren't fully developed, and that's a complicated thing to ask an adult, let alone a child. I think everybody does deep down value life, but they're stupid because they're young and they're not developed yet. And that's something that I think is the job of the parent to try to bring them along.
I agree and disagree. We're a community. We're a village. We're a village without being a village. We're a town. Mm-hmm. So it needs to come from inside the house. I agree with you 100%. But you know what? It also has to be reinforced. And,
absolutely.
You
brought up the De La Roche family. I was old enough to remember that, and that was a problem within there was abuse inside the house.
Yes. And
it was a horrible, horrible outcome. And there was people that tried to help the kids, but if you're not getting it from inside, it's more difficult. And it's not impossible. There's a lot of people with bad upbringings that turn out just fine. But it does start at the house. I mean, I think what the police are doing in our town is admirable. They're developing a rapport that I never had with the police. I mean, who's the DARE officer this year?
We have two, Kyle Dutcher and Greg Santangelo.
Kids run up to him. I think that that reinforcement that there's good guys out there, there's people on your side. I mean, I think there was as much abuse and bad parenting when we were kids. Well, what's going on now? I mean, that's it's a tough question.
The other thing is the mental health numbers throughout the industrialized countries are on par with ours. We have similar mental illness rates. For example, in Japan, Germany, any number of industrialized countries, we have the same levels of pop culture consumption, video game consumption. I don't know if you've ever watched violent anime from Japan, but they don't have the same rates of gun violence deaths. There's a reason for that. I believe it's gun access. But we continue to have this debate. I do believe I'm a big fan of the It Takes a Village, and I do think that there is a component of studies have shown that it's not just mental health as in addressing mental illness, but as in wellness programs that ultimately make the difference. And it sounds like the chief and his community are doing that kind of integral community building, wellness building within the communities, and it's those type of programs, studies have shown, that actually end up making the biggest difference in creating safer communities and towns.
Regarding the schools and valuing life and so forth, back in the 90s and into the early 2000s, character education was on everyone's list of topics to cover with students from the youngest of ages, from kindergarten, pre-K on up. That eventually rolled into HIB, harassment, or I should say bullying, harassment, intimidation, bullying. That took off into the, let's say, 2007, 8, 9, 10, and so forth. And then soon after that, once all of the social media and the Instagram and the Facebook, and now we're on to Snapchat, once that took off, then all of a sudden digital citizenship really became a focus on points that we wanted to make with our middle school students, especially because that's usually the age when there's issues online. So basically the schools have adjusted with the message that we're getting from, let's say, the Department of Education or what's happening in society, and we've done our best. Many of the principles going back to the 90s with character education and anti-bullying and so forth, we still practice those through assemblies, lessons in class, through our health curriculum and so forth. So we've done our best, but there's other forces out there that obviously some students are obviously listening to, unfortunately.
I'd like to say a couple things, if possible. I have a little bit of research, so I'm going to come up here and ask about it. So I'm going to start with a little bit of good news, because I think, like a lot of people, when we've heard about all the awful things that have been going on, I think we started maybe Googling things and doing some research to find out what's going on. And so the first bit of good news is that, according to USA Today, with the states, they gave a list of the states with the most and least gun violence. And actually, New Jersey comes in 45 out of 50. So I think that's something we can really be proud of. And New York, 48. And I started to look at, because, we're all trying to figure out what is the problem. And so I started to look at what the factors are. And I found this graph that I can share with you guys. And in the USA article, it talked about poverty rate, violent crime rate, and there didn't seem to be so much of a correlation between poverty rates or anything like that. But this, which is from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, shows that the main factor between what states are really high on this list and states that are low on the list is gun ownership itself. And I think we're starting to talk about what is the crux of the issue. Is it mental health? Is it gun ownership? Is it a change in society? Well, when you have Alaska being the state where you're most likely to be killed by a gun, and New York and New Jersey being the least, I really honestly don't think that there are more crazy people in Alaska.
You ever been there?
I don't know. I haven't, but I've been other places. I would say, from all the neuroses and things in New York and New Jersey, I really don't think that there are more crazy people there. But when you look at the number of guns and the number of deaths, and you see Alaska all the way up in this corner, and you see the low gun ownership states in the other corner. And so then it makes me start to question, it makes me want to think, why do people feel like they need to own guns? And I know it's a societal thing here in the United States. And I have a little bit of perspective because I've lived in Texas for a number of years. I've lived in England. And those are just about as opposite culturally as you can get. And I think Americans tend to be fearful. And that's why people want to own guns. And I think the way I feel personally in the town of Park Ridge is that we have a wonderful professional police force. I think we all feel pretty safe compared to other places. I know that if somebody parks a car on my street and it shouldn't be there, that the police are going to find it in Park Ridge. I mean, we have a very active police force who are trained to use their weapons, who are going to keep us, I think, a lot safer than if we have loaded guns in our drawers. So I think having this, having professionals that can help us and that we can rely on can maybe make people, when they're going to make a decision about whether they need a gun in their house or not, that we can make a decision, well, what is really going to keep us the safest, I looked at Texas, which is number 28, and the population of Texas, and we're talking about percentages, population of Texas is about equal to New York and New Jersey combined. But there are 3 times per capita the amount of gun deaths there. And it is a totally different culture there. I mean, people in Texas love their guns. And I lived there for a number of years, and I just want to share a story. And it relates to locked guns, and it relates to everything that we were talking about, asking whether there's a gun in a house. Well, I used to be a professor at Texas A&M. My husband, Howard, was a professor there as well. And yes, and I I also sang at the Houston Grand Opera, and this was 100 miles away. So I stayed. Sometimes I didn't want to do that drive back and forth when I had a rehearsal or a number of performances. I stayed with a friend there, and my friend was an educated singer, not even an American, and she was married to an American singer as well. And he was not only a very, very fine singer, but he was very active and actually pretty well-known Christian singer and a minister. So you'd think you'd be in a home there that would have reasonably educated, trustworthy, good people, you know. So one day I'm driving back and forth to my workplace, and I noticed that there's a gun in the glove compartment. But that was to prevent carjackings, and I thought I was staying with sane people, so I didn't think very much of it. And then another time I was in the car and a domestic situation started occurring. And so there was grabbing of this gun. We ended up in the house. And just a few minutes later, when it hadn't even calmed down, but their child came home. And literally moments before that, there was a weapon being brandished. And then 15 minutes later, my friend, who, as I am, was a singing teacher, 15 minutes later than that, a student showed up to have a music lesson in this house, where before there were people pointing weapons at each other. And that just is something I had to share with you. It blew my mind. I mean, I would never have a weapon in my home. But there are homes where you would think you have a Christian minister, you have an educated artist in that house, and you're going, and this kind of thing can happen. I think we really need to think, is it really worth it to have that gun to protect your vehicle for the carjacking? Because what's going to happen in a carjacking? You're going to lose your car, right? Okay, somebody's pointing a gun at you, get out of your car. You leave your vehicle, bye-bye car, but it's not like you're going to have a domestic situation with volatile people in front of your child, in front of, you know. So I think really, you know, and I have lived in another, I'm sorry if I'm taking up a lot of time, but I have lived in another culture where there are no guns, basically, in houses in England. And it's not like that's a perfect society or there's no violence. But it has a totally different feeling. And I think, and just to share with you, the people there think that we are absolutely bonkers. And the people there really actually don't think terribly highly about our values, because they see these things happening and they think we really value our Second Amendment, we really value our freedom to have a gun. But do we really need to use this freedom? Do we really need to value this freedom in the context of what's been going on? You know, it's just something that we have to ask ourselves. And I know this wasn't supposed to be a debate about that, but it's just something to put on the table, because when we're here to find solutions. And maybe the solution is really actually having less guns in our society and trusting our really wonderful professionals to make this society safe for ourselves, safe for them. And anyway, that's what I just came up to say.
Thank you,
I just
Laura.
want to thank you.
If I could just interject real quick on that. As far, this also touches on what the gentleman brought up before about the culture of violence and its roots. London, England, as it's basically as gun-free as it's going to get, their murder rate just exceeded New York City's with just knives. So it is, England also leads Europe in aggravated assaults. So I understand that this is a forum about gun violence and addressing gun violence. However, we do need to look at this, in law enforcement, we always say the totality of the circumstances. If we focus too narrowly on one thing, we may lose sight of, what he brought, valuing life in general. So do please consider that.
Thank you. That's a good point. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Karen Brodsky. I've lived in town for 11 years. My fifth grader just finished the DARE program, and it's a phenomenal program, and my first grader loved Back to Scoop Night. So I think that the police presence is really making a big difference. Couple questions. I'm going to change the focus a little bit back to our schools. And 2 weeks ago, there was the big announcement about somebody threatening to kill children in Emerson. And it was a big hoopla in terms of the high school not notifying the police department. I don't know, the superintendent I know has come out and said it wasn't something that required the police to be involved at that point. But from a parent perspective, if a child comes up to mine and says, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to videotape you being killed, that's something that I would hope our schools would at least consult our police department to make sure that the rest of our children are safe. So I just wanted to understand kind of what our protocols are within our schools. God forbid something like that happens, given the fact you said we have 25 children who are getting ongoing therapy.
Well, we do have a memorandum of agreement between the police department and the schools, and it really focuses on sharing that type of information. And as we had expressed earlier, Dr. Gamter and myself and our detectives meet with the school officials very consistently. We do share that information.
But are you guys, I guess, Dr. Gamper, the question is, how quickly is the police department involved? Even if it's not substantiated from a school perspective.
Anytime a student threatens violence to another student or threatens to harm himself or herself and so forth, if it's on social media, if it's in the classroom, if it's at recess, it's always investigated by the administration, and then the police department is notified. If there's ever a mention of a gun in any way, shape, or form, the police department is called.
Okay. And then one other question regarding school safety. I know my child was in kindergarten when Sandy Hook happened, and I know we've made a lot of progress trying to put that extra door in at the elementary schools to get buzzed in. Realistically, it's glass. Anyone can break it. But the bigger concern for me is that the doors are unlocked on a regular basis. As a box top coordinator for the school, I love the fact that I can run over to the elementary school on any given night at 7 o'clock and go pick up the box tops from the front lobby, but I can also get into the building. And that scares the bejesus out of me in terms of somebody.
Which doors are you referring to that are unlocked and when?
Front doors of Westridge Elementary School.
Not during the school day?
Not during the school day, in the evening.
Okay, so are we talking before or during or after extras?
After extras.
After extras. Okay, so that's when usually the schools are being used by the PRA for basketball, I'm assuming?
I've been there when there's no sports going on. And from my perspective, if somebody wants to sneak something into the school, they're not going to do it while kids are in session. They're going to sneak something in while the classrooms are unattended and then go get it later on once they're in the building.
Okay, so that shouldn't be, and I'll check on that as soon as I go into work tomorrow morning. Those doors should be locked at all times. They should not be open.
So you're going to lose that privilege of getting
I know. I'm happy to make my fifth grader go in and pick it up after school, but it's one of those. It makes me nervous. As a parent.
I would agree with you. They're supposed to be locked. Shouldn't be open.
And it's those type concerns that we talk about these lines of communication. If you see something, say something, goes way beyond terrorism. It goes, to our society. If you see something that's concerning, you have to say something in a timely manner.
Right, and we have, and this is a close-knit community, but at the same time, I wasn't when I heard about Emerson, I was driving to a social event with my husband, and I kind of said, oh my God, that scares me as a parent. And as a citizen. So thank you.
I can tell you my experiences at the schools is during the day it's like Fort Knox. So I'm confident that during the day that it's locked down and nobody's stumbling into the schools. So, but we'll look at that. June?
My name is June Bertini. I live in Westwood, but I still, when I'm asked, tell people I'm from Park Ridge.
Former councilwoman.
Yeah. First of all, Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a great conversation, great information. I know personally what a great job you all do, and I'm very grateful. My question has to do with the future. I'm especially concerned about your wish list for how we can make the schools even safer. For example, you mentioned that there is panic buttons at strategic locations. Should there be panic buttons in every classroom? Should we have people trying to break into the schools to see if it is possible? Do we have live videos of, once an intruder is identified that he's there, do we need live videos that feed right into the police department with smoke bombs released to keep them in one place? Do all the doors of the classrooms lock automatically? And I know all this is very expensive, and there are probably things I haven't even heard of or thought of, but I'd like to know what's on your wish list and how can citizens help to raise the money to get it, because I know it's expensive.
I would say in answer to that, June, I'm looking forward to this best practices with the school safety task force, because we are going to combine a variety of professionals, and from that we're supposed to have a working document by October. And I think that's going to identify a lot of the good things that people are doing that maybe others aren't doing. And I think we could go all night in identifying my wish list, but I think Park Ridge has done a great job in constantly improving based on some of our analysis of our active shooter pros and cons and I know Dr. Gamper is constantly looking out and inspecting what they're expecting. So,
and I know from my experiences in Park Ridge, it's a community that comes together to make things happen. So I know that there are many societal problems that have to be addressed, mental health, gun ownership, whatever. But right now, there have been several mass school shootings where people have thought it can't happen here, and yet it does. So I just want us to have the latest, up-to-the-minute, best technology and best collaboration between schools and police that we could possibly have. And this community will support it, I'm sure.
June, I thank you for your comments, but when it comes to school safety, the Board of Education doesn't have a wish list. If we need something, we figure out a way to make it happen. We do not. The conversations are usually rather quick when it comes to something that we need to make the children safer. So I thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
But the bottom line is that I really feel comfortable and so forth where we are right now.
Just to address some of your concerns real quick too, you had mentioned the video feed. That we do have live in the patrol cars already. I think now if you look at the two latest incidents, Parkland, Florida, and Santa Fe, in both cases the fire alarms were pulled. The investigation is still being done on whether it was a student, a teacher trying to do it to notify, or if it was the actual killer that was trying to do that to create, because we are now reaching a point where the youngest of children that when all these lockdown drills started are now reaching the age where they're doing this. So they know the procedure. So if we have a panic button in every room, they'll know, okay, the panic button's in the room, I'll just hit it, and trigger it, whatever. So it does have to, you do have to look at it from a tactical point of view as well as, so yes, you do want as much access to as much emergency response as possible for the right people. So, but yeah, obviously we're certainly looking to every possible, enhancement that we can do.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that you have the camera access, because that's the real problem. The police get to the site in a minute or two, and every minute is so critical. And if you could see what's going on inside the building, everybody will be safer. So that was a wonderful addition, Dr. Gamper. Is there any maybe the last? Yes, you.
Brief question about the safe storage of guns. If you're having guns in your house that are not safely stored, are you breaking the law?
I can answer that question.
My gun specialist will handle that.
It is a federal statute, and also was adopted by the states. I certainly know New Jersey, but I believe it is nationwide. In fact, every firearm sold now is sold with a pamphlet advising, with the state-specific laws, and it comes with a gun lock, indicating that leaving a loaded firearm within easy access to a minor, the owner is responsible for any misuse or damages that are caused by that. I forgot the exact New Jersey statute off the top of my head, but I do believe it's a 4th degree or a 3rd degree crime.
But if there,
Only if they're 15 or younger.
if there is no incident, are they still in violation of any law?
Well, that's a case of, do we know about it?
Well, if we know about it, if,
The law of common sense.
yeah, but I'm saying, if it's known, is that person breaking the law?
Your question is that if you have firearms that are not in the safe,
There's guns laying around the
unsecure,
house that are not secured. Is that person breaking the law or not?
I think there's
Whether or
No,
not,
as
whether or
long
not
as-
it's
if
fired.
there's
you
a
know?
privacy expectation in the house.
I know there is, but
No, there isn't a requirement to have them.
I have to have a
Lock
smoke
them.
alarm, I have to have a carbon monoxide detector,
There isn't a requirement to where if barring juveniles in the home, there's no requirement for. I think what you're getting as a safe storage
Yeah.
kind of law.
I think only Massachusetts has that law.
Only, yeah. Something to think about, we should have maybe.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Corinne, you want to get the microphone?
I recently went to, Governor Phil Murphy hosted an event for gun safety, and he mentioned that now the New Jersey State Police records are available to the public. And what I found interesting about that was now we can actually see, like, in each county, the rates of violence, not just gun violence, but all violence. So is that available, and how can we make the public aware of how they can look for that?
Probably through the state police. The state police keeps the records for each different county.
So just NewJerseyStatePolice.com?
The information that you're looking for, this is also one of my jobs at the department. It's called uniform crime reporting.
Mm-hmm.
The way the FBI gets all these statistics, every police department collects data regarding incidents that occur in their jurisdiction. It's a two-tiered system. Certain crimes are scored just by their mere reporting. Others are scored based on our confirmation that something occurred. We collect all that data, and every month we send that to the state police. The state police compiles all of that data, assaults, simple assault, whether it's domestic, and there's no personal information, but it is broken down by categories. The state police compiles all that data and then forwards it to the FBI, who compiles it from nationwide. So I believe through the state police, or the uniform crime reporting section, you'll be able to get that kind of crime statistics, crime data. I don't know what their breakdown is in terms of by county and locality, though.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking is I'm curious about Bergen County. Do we have, I'm just focusing on gun violence right now. Do we have in the county, or is this data available, do we have mostly gun deaths from suicide, homicide, or do we have rates? Are those statistics available?
Through the state police.
I don't think
that's
they're
the
available down to the county level. I don't think the kind of.
Yeah, I don't know if it's broken down that specifically.
But now I can
unless
look,
that-
right? Because it's available to the public, so now I can see what's available, right?
This is, I guess, a new program that Governor Murphy's instituting.
Yes.
So I don't know if the chief has more information through the Chiefs Association or.
I would say that, if you're going to, and I don't want to talk badly about any other county, but surrounding counties, if you read the local paper and the news media online, Bergen County, I would assume, has a lesser rate of violent encounters than other counties in different areas. But, we're very fortunate in Park Ridge. If you're looking for that data, I can do a little research and reach out for you, and maybe we'll locate it together.
Yeah, I would
But,
love that.
I don't think, Bergen County is not known for its gun violence.
There are quarterly reports now being issued, I believe, through the Attorney General's office on sources of guns. I don't know what additional information there. And so there is, the first report came out maybe a month ago, where Pennsylvania was number one, or maybe even less than a month ago. So there are reports that the attorney, I believe out of the Attorney General's office, and there is a new, Governor Murphy's appointed Bill Kastner, formerly VP of Public Affairs at Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, to be his point person on gun violence, gun safety issues. And one of the things he's doing is working with a multi-state consortium of Mid-Atlantic and Northeast states along the corridor here, 7 or 8 states. And they're going to work together on the whole issue, all the issues that we're talking about, trafficking, etc. So, and I'm sure they will issue some reports, but there are these new reports available, at least on sources, maybe more.
Awesome, thank you. And then my daughter has a question for Dr. Gamper. Go ahead, Gio.
Now I'm nervous.
Something about homework.
My excuse.
How can I keep my school safe?
How can you keep your school safe, Gia? You can keep your school safe by, if you see something that you think is funny or you don't like, or you think something is strange, or you see someone in the school, like an adult that you don't know, you make sure that you talk to your teacher, you tell your mom, you tell any one of the adults that's in your life right now, you let them know exactly what it is that you think is strange, and then they will look into it. But that's the best thing that you can do.
Thank you, Dr. Gamper. And with that, I think that's a great way to conclude tonight's. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Officer Stowe, Dr. Gamper, Chief Madden, Dennis, and Larissa. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.